Anya Hynell is a certified sex and intimacy coach, the founder of Pleasure Please Coaching, and a passionate advocate for sexual empowerment and authentic connection. With a deep understanding of human sexuality, Anya helps individuals and couples overcome challenges in their intimate lives and unlock the full potential of their pleasure. Through her work, Anya offers a transformative approach to sexual and emotional well-being, focusing on the importance of pleasure, communication, and self-awareness. She guides her clients to develop a healthy relationship with their bodies and desires, while breaking free from societal taboos and shame that often hinder sexual freedom. Anya's coaching philosophy is grounded in the belief that everyone has a right to experience fulfilling, pleasurable, and deeply connected intimate relationships. So you're doing good things. Anya was very kind and sort of talked to me already for sort of 20 minutes about something in my life. So I know she's a very warm, very sensitive, and very knowledgeable individual. So this is going to be a really good conversation. First of all, you're very, very welcome. Thank you for being kind enough to spend some time with us today. I wanted to sort of start by talking a little bit about your early life, your sort of teenage years. What were your formative years like, and can you draw a connection from the person you were then to the person you are today?
Yeah, and I first just want to say thank you for a wonderful intro. For the people listening to this, I have a very big smile on my face right now. It's very beautiful. And yeah, my teenage years. I hmm, I was quite outspoken in my
Mhm.
teenage years. I've always been done my own thing. If I don't think something exists, I created it. Like I created an outdoor club in high school because I thought people needed greater access to the outdoors. I was the president of the environmental club or co-president. I did it with my best friend. And so I've always gone after. I studied at a boarding school because or at a
Mm.
semester school because I wanted more experience.
Mhm.
And I didn't like my high school. And so like I've made things happen and I think that has shaped my career in that I don't think there exists, especially in Sweden, a lot of resources around sex and relationships. So I will create it. I don't know exactly how I will do it. I don't know what it will be, but I want to create a forum. So I think that part is my more businessy side. And then for like the intimacy side, for the sex side, I didn't get any sex education in high school. Virtually. I got 3 hours of if you have sex, you will get an STI, a sexually transmitted infection, and die. So I didn't know condoms help. I didn't know anything about consent. I didn't know anything about pleasure. And this set me up for when I started college to not have any tools to navigate sex. And I started seeing someone who I started sleeping with, and I experienced, is it okay to talk about sexual assaults on here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I
So.
experienced the sexual assaults, and it was really, really confusing. I didn't know anything about my body, and I stumbled across a sex education podcast. I was like, fuck, women can have orgasms? Like, women have a clitoris? Like, I didn't know the first thing about my body. And I became obsessed. I was like, I need to learn everything about my body. I need to learn everything about STIs. I need to know everything about consent because I needed to reclaim it. I needed to reclaim my sexuality as my own, reclaim my body as my own. And for me, education was a pathway to get there. And I read every book I could find, listened to every podcast. I was a complete nerd about sex, which I don't know if you can say is nerd, but um, and that's how I started with sex education because I genuinely believed more people, and I was talking to my friends, needed tools around how to navigate consent, how to get in touch with their own body, how to know what they liked, how to be confident when giving a partner pleasure. Like these are things we don't know. We're not taught, most of us. And I come from a more extreme example of not even knowing where my clitoris is, but I don't think it's all too little of an example. And
Mm.
there was a few more experiences in high school that probably had a profound impact on me. Like my senior year, I don't think, now I'm going back to high school, but my senior year, I participated in the Vagina Monologues written
Mhm.
by Eve Ensler. And before that, I couldn't say the word sex. I don't think I could say the word vagina. And I think, although was still a virgin when I participated, or I don't like the word virgin, but I'd never had sex. When I participated in these, I do think it might have spurred the seed to have some more confidence starting to talk about these things later in life.
And I should have said at the beginning that Anya's in Sweden today, but spent a lot of time growing up in the US and California. So she's say an odd mix or an interesting blend, I guess is a different way of putting it. So once you'd had what sounds like quite a rigorous academic interrogation of what sex was, how did that manifest in your personal and physical life? Did that make sex suddenly much better? Did you realize what you wanted? Were you much more attuned with your body by then?
When I started learning about sex.
Yeah, once you sort of started learning about it, it sounds like you learnt about it from podcasts, from books, etc., not necessarily by experimenting. So
Yeah.
then when you actually got with new partners, did it feel very different? Did it become much more exciting, much more what you'd read and heard about?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that shifted is shame.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
my mom, especially, has a lot of shame. I hope it's okay that I say around sex. And, like, although I think she really wants to be sex positive, she tried to speak sex positively. Like, part of that sticks with you. And I don't think that's a weird experience. And so for me, it's like, okay, if I go and have sex with people, I'm a slut. I am dirty. And so learning about these things, I think it empowered me to be like, oh, I'm doing it for me, not because I'm scared of being a slut or not because. And being able to speak about things for me, the most empowering was like, okay, not having the shame allowed me to go up to my partners and say, I like this and this. What do you like? What makes sex good for you? Or I navigate STIs in this way. How do you do it? How can we be safe? Or, yeah. And I think it allowed me to have amazing sexual experiences. Like, I think around the age of 22, I dated a couple for 2 years, like on and off. And that was an amazing sexual experience that I can't have imagined I would have, and an amazing romantic experience too. Like, I was in love with a woman. And so I don't imagine I would have ever had that opportunity if I hadn't learned about sex education.
It is one of the sad things. And I talked to a somatic coach the other day, and she was saying that when for many people, when they reach puberty and they start having certain feelings in their body, they perhaps can't put a name to them. Um, we obviously at that age, we're not going to sort of rush out and have sex. Well, maybe we are, but typically we're not. So we masturbate and we do this. We touch our body a little bit, but we sort of been programmed by society that there's a thing in the UK, or I'm sure it's America as well, that if you keep doing that, you'll go blind. And stop touching yourself there. And we have this terrible fear, I guess, somebody bursting into the bedroom or the bathroom. So it's all very quick and very, very hurried. And we never. And she said, "Look, have you ever spent like an hour or 2 hours just literally laying by yourself, exploring your own body?" No. And I'm much older than you, and I said, no, I haven't. And I think that's one of the things. So then we masturbate, then we start out from relationships. So maybe we never truly understand what we like and don't like, and then we almost expect the other person to be able to just intuit that without us knowing ourselves. So I do think there's a massive importance in actually spending time, as you said, knowing what we like and what we want, and then asking for that from a partner. I think that's a big gap in our education. So we from biology we know physically what our bodies do, but we don't know that the back of our earlobe is sensitive, or the inside of our wrist, or the back of our knee, or whatever. Of course we don't. So that's not something we think about. But I think it's important to try and understand our own needs, desires, and what makes us happy, as well as trying to please somebody else.
Yeah. Can I respond to this? Because I
Please, please, yeah.
what you're saying right now is actually really interesting, and I'm going to respond in the context of Swedish women.
Mhm.
So I held a women's circle based on opening up to more pleasure. And after this, I'm trying to develop some kind of course for women and non binary peoples to explore pleasure, to explore what they like, or explore sexuality. So I've been interviewing a bunch of Swedish women. And over again, one of the biggest problems Swedish women face, and I'm guessing women around the world, but I don't want to say that because
Mhm.
I haven't interviewed people from around the world, is we don't know what we like
Yep.
and we don't know how to communicate it. And and I don't think people have ever been given the opportunity to explore. Fine, you can lay down in your own bed and explore your body for 2 hours. Amazing place to start. Most people don't have the opportunity to do that because of shame or because of space or whatever. And then to explore with a partner, to be put in positions where you're allowed to explore different sexualities, different ways of being without being shamed, without being stigmatized, without putting yourself at risk or at risk of a partner hating you. It's not something we have the opportunity. And I think also something that's so
Mhm.
vital to learn. Like, who wants to die and not know what we like? And I think so many of us die, and this might
Yeah.
be extreme, without truly knowing what we like. And it's such a, for me, that's quite sad.
So how do we do that? So when you're going to have your time with the women, and some of them might perhaps have thought of maybe they don't just like men, maybe they might think they might like women, but how do we go about exploring that without without risk or without maybe damaging a relationship we already have? It's very hard, isn't it, to sort of, to expose ourselves to that, because I think what people first of all um, don't want to be made to feel more shame or more guilt. So then that's one of the things within maybe a short-term or long-term relationship. We often don't ask for something that we might want to try because I might feel the other person might say, "Oh my goodness, why do you want that? Oh no, I could never do that." And then it's really hard. How do we get to that place where we have maybe explored things, and we might find out we don't like them, but at least we've tried them.
Yeah. Hmm. I want to take a step back. I
Mhm.
think the LGBTQ plus exploration, I am bisexual, but like I don't want to go into that whole. I want to talk about exploring sexuality in general. It could be exploring sleeping with different genders or
Mhm.
different genitalia, or it could be exploring BDSM or exploring different parts of connecting to your body or exploring tantra. I don't know what it
Mhm.
means. And I think this is the golden question that I'm trying to figure out, is what is the best way to help people explore? And I think for me, it needs to be experimental to some degree, and not that we need to go out and have sex with different people, but we need to feel into our bodies and like to explore what kind of touch. Maybe you're paired up with someone and you do a touch exercise. Like, how do different kinds of touch feel on my body? Like you were saying, pleasure mapping, like
Mhm.
laying down by yourself, but maybe laying down with someone else and
Mhm.
just feeling in. And it doesn't need to be highly sexual. It can be highly sexual, but yeah, like how does it feel to be touched? How does it feel to maybe be bitten on my arm, or to be like lightly touched, or to be held? And that can be one way. And I love to talk about, and this comes from the Somatica Institute, which is my training, and they talk a lot about core desires, which are the essential feelings that we want from intimacy.
Mhm.
And for me, this concept was quite mind blowing because instead of trying to say, oh, we should have sex in this way or this way, what is the core feeling that you're going for when you want to have sex or when you have sex? And there's hundreds of different core desires or core feelings that we're looking for. And there's hundreds of different ways to get each one of those core desires usually fulfilled. And so now there's quite a lot of background noise. I don't know if I should close my window.
I can't hear anything.
Okay. Okay, I'm getting distracted, but it's a plane outside. Um, But so once, and these desires or these feelings generally stay with us our whole lives. How we fulfill them can change, and they often come from the places in our childhood where we experience pain or experience trauma. And I'll give an example. My core desires are to feel accepted or maybe worshipped
Mm-hmm.
and not in control. I grew up in a family where I had to have a lot of control. And I also didn't feel very accepted. And so I want the opposite of those. Some people want the same. Maybe some people in my position would want control or not feel accepted. And that would be their core desires. And so it's repetition with efficacy and repetition, and then getting the opposite. And I think understanding these things can help us navigate, okay, what should we explore? How can we have good sex? Maybe it's trying some kind of BDSM thing to fulfill our core desires, or maybe it's trying some kind of tantra to feeling worshipped, or maybe it's trying a massage, or maybe it's just having our partners really stare into our eyes, or maybe having them whisper cute things in our ears. I don't know what it is, but instead of like exploring from a place of like, here are all these different things to try, is okay, we'll explore from a place of your feelings that you're trying to fulfill, and how do we explore BDSM with that feeling.
Mm.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think for all of those things, it's potentially sort of taking small steps, isn't it? So I think sometimes people hear BDSM and think, "Oh my goodness, that means I'm going to be sort of chained to the bed and I'm going to be gagged and blindfolded," and it might just be starting off with spanking somebody, starting off with pinning their arms above their head, and it's how you step into those things. You don't
Yes.
have to sort of start off by going to some very extreme BDSM club for the first ever experience. That might not be. Maybe you do, but that might be too much. But it is that trying things, because it's the same with anything, with food, with drink, whatever. We don't tend to gorge ourselves on something brand new. We try a little bit of it. Do you like that? I'm not sure. Do you like that wine? Do you like that whiskey? Do you like whatever? We try a little bit and then have more and more. And maybe the same with sex, that we try. We dip our toe in the water, then our foot, then we dive in. It's yeah. But I think a lot of things you've talked about so far really feel like, how do we get to feel sexually empowered? And I wondered if you have an a statement as to what you think sexual empowerment is, and why sexual empowerment is so important in a fulfilling relationship or relationships.
Yes. Hmm. I don't have an official statement on what sexual empowerment
I
is.
don't need a dictionary definition. It's okay.
I want to make a note on BDSM. I don't think, I guess I'll tie this into sexual empowerment. I
Mhm.
think for me, sexual empowerment is being able to advocate for what you like and being accepting of yourself when doing so. Or let me actually, I'm going to take a step back and try to think about this for 1 minute. Hmm. Yeah, I guess for me, sexual empowerment is something, and this isn't going to be official words, so it's not a fully formulated definition, but I think it's something of being able to take a step back of what society expects from us, a step back from the shame and stigmatization, and choosing for yourself. And sometimes choosing for yourself might be choosing to fit into societal boxes because it's easier. Quite frankly, it's hard to, if your sexual fantasy is to be a dog all the time and walk around on the street as a dog, you're gonna face some stigmatization doing that. And maybe you're willing to face that, and maybe you're not. And I don't want to say that that's not sexual empowerment, not doing it. And that's an extreme example, but I think all of us sometimes choose to fit into societal boxes, but I think doing so consciously is sexual empowerment. I also believe
Mm.
sexual empowerment is understanding yourself at that point as much as you're able to. So I don't know if we're ever going to be fully know exactly 100% of the things we like and dislike. But sexual empowerment, I believe, is the willingness to explore what you like, willingness maybe to communicate what you like to a degree. It might not always be well received. And so, and also being able to stay with your no. I think especially women and men actually have their boundaries walked over so much. And now I'm thinking of BDSM. Maybe some people don't ever want to do that, and that's fully okay. And learning what that feels like and being able to say no and feeling confident saying no. For me, that's equally as much sexual empowerment. Sexual empowerment could, for me, be never having sex again in my life. Like, I don't think that's any less sexual empowerment versus someone that goes out and sleeps with a new person every single day and feels great doing so.
Mhm.
So, being able to listen to yourself and make that reality versus what society thinks, I think for me is a sexual empowerment. I don't know if that's a good answer.
No, it is, and I think it's very much about, and it's not necessarily just sexual empowerment, just general empowerment. It just means being comfortable with the decisions you've made, owning your own decisions, and being able to express those. And I think one of the things that when I've talked to people in the BDSM community or people that experiment a lot in that space, one of the good things that they have is that they say a lot of the excitement is about the anticipation created by negotiating what's going to happen. Because many people in BDSM community don't just start. They talk about things that are a definite yes, things that are a definite no, and things that are maybe, and safe words, and all those things. And I think there's a lot. People might think it's a bit weird, but I think there's a huge amount of respect in the BDSM community between dominants and submissives or people that switch. And I think they talk about, right, I really love that. No, I really don't like breath play. No, I don't like biting. I don't like blood, or I do like this or whatever. And I think often in a, say this, I'm not sure what the right word is, often in a less exciting and a more traditional sex relationship, we don't talk about that. We just sort of have sex, and then that's it. We don't talk about what we do and don't, and will and won't, etc. So I think we could maybe learn something from from people that, and they said the anticipation of knowing what's going to happen and what's not going to happen is heightens the arousal and makes the whole experience much more exciting.
I think we can always learn in BDSM where I also think about like polyamory in
Yeah.
this sense. And I'm not necessarily a BDSM or polyamory advocate. I
Mhm.
actually don't care at all about the way people have sex. And if BDSM or polyamory works for people, great. If not equally as great. But like with polyamory, one thing we talk about is like jealousy, is like
Yes.
monogamous couples don't talk about like the boundaries of what monogamy is, but there's so many different boundaries of monogamy. Some monogamous couples are fully okay with their girlfriends going out and kissing another girl at a club. That is within their monogamy, while others might not even be okay with certain people following an Instagram. And so, and I think similarly to like BDSM is like the negotiation that goes
Mhm.
into these things. And I think learning from alternative communities is something that we can take through all parts. And whether it's BDSM or polyamory or even queer culture, there are like essential parts. Like we need to communicate about these things because things aren't clear. And when things aren't clear, that is when there's problems erupted. And I also want to say, like, I also advocate for communicating. I also think we can over communicate. I was in a relationship recently where we had to talk about all the problems all the time, and that was really hard. So I do think there is a balance. Like, there is something erotic within the unknown, too.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the things you've talked about a fair amount with your mum and other people is that some people, probably far too many, struggle with shame or guilt about their sexuality. And I think one of the relatively new phrases that we hear talked about is people suffering from porn addiction or sex addiction and feeling the shame that brings with it. And I know you have strong views around both of those. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, yeah, using the word addiction in connection with porn and sex.
Yeah. I think it's a hard thing to talk about because a lot of people believe they're addicted to porn, sex, and masturbation. And I don't want to minimize those people's
Mm-hmm.
experience. Like, it can be a compulsive behavior that we do over and over again that might not feel healthy. And I get that. But I believe when we use words like addiction, it is so stigmatizing. And quite frankly, watching porn, masturbating, having sex are normal, healthy behaviors that most people do at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I often think we should masturbate more, especially for people with vulvas. Um, Watching porn, find there can be negative side effects. It also comes with a lot of beautiful things. It comes with a lot of pleasure. It comes with a lot of like anxiety release and sex. I don't think I need to explain why it's amazing. And I think so many people believe that they're broken. And I can talk about porn, especially. Like, I have people, oh, I need to stop watching porn because I think I have fantasies that are wrong from it, or I can't get an erection with my partner, blah, blah, blah. And there is so much shame around porn. And I think sometimes, yes, there are studies that show that porn can be linked to different things. Breaking your porn watching habit or breaking a masturbation habit is so fucking hard versus working on the other things all
Mm.
around it to increase your confidence, to accept your fantasies, to embrace, to be able to communicate easier. So, why are we just focusing on the one thing that is riddled in shame, that is hard to break, that might be actually serving you to cope with anxiety or to relax? And we take away that without building up all the other things. So, and I also think like there's a reason why, and that I wrote this like and sex addiction, porn and sex addiction aren't written into the DSM-5,
Mm.
like because they are so stigmatized. Like they're not real addictions according to the Psychological Society. Um, and I do believe because it's just yeah, because it is too much shame to make it happen. And I really believe in what I posted about yesterday is when psychologists, when people who should be in the mental health field stigmatize these things as abnormal behaviors, when most people do them, most people are going to think they're fucked up. I don't believe most people are fucked up. I believe
Yeah.
most people are pretty fucking normal and just don't realize they're normal.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think has changed with porn is, see, when I was so I've got a 15-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter. So when I was my son's age, porn was a magazine. It was a piece of paper with a picture of a naked woman on it. I was like, oh my goodness, it's so exciting. Whereas now, I think research suggests most boys in particular, access any type of porn that they ever want to at sort of 12 and 13. And I think there's a question over whether, particularly for women, I guess, well, maybe for men as well. I think maybe does it set unrealistic expectations? Should we expect all women don't have any hair? That most women like to have sex with more than one person at the same time? That most men have larger than average penises and can go for a long, long time? Um, yeah, it's whether it sets, and I guess we've always had that going back in history. We've always had magazines that have pictures of people that look a certain way, and we think, oh, should we look that way? But yeah, it's whether porn is setting unrealistic expectations of people. There is some beautiful porn. I interviewed a female, a feminist porn director called Inka Winters, and she makes some stunning work. It's very cinematic, it's very impressive. It's hardcore porn, which is very beautifully shot, versus the sort of 3, 5, 10 minute clips you might see on Pornhub that happens to get 4 billion hits a month. So somebody's looking at it. So yeah, does it set unrealistic expectations? How does that?
I don't want to say porn doesn't come without issues. I
Mhm.
absolutely think it comes without issues. The amount of people who have performance anxiety, for
Mm.
example, who think their penises are too small, or I know there was a documentary in Sweden about, like, it's called hort sex, hard sex. I
Mhm.
don't know exactly, or like aggressive sex,
Yeah.
and like these are issues. Like, and I but I don't believe it falls on the individual. Like, these are societal issues, and
Yes.
I think especially around 12 and 13-year-olds, like, yes, porn is too easily accessible to some degree, and the kind of porn that we're producing, it's becoming more and more aggressive, more and more
Mm.
extreme, less and less emotion based. Or emotion we can debate, but less about the storyline and the interaction between two people. So yes, there's absolutely issues with porn, but does that mean that any one individual is that fucked up? No. Does that mean because you watch porn, and I'm not speaking to you, but people in
Mm.
general, that something's flawed with you?
Yeah.
No. That means you're probably a normal man, or often a woman,
Mm.
or non binary, whatever you are, person living in Western society. And yes, that might come with some side effects, but it's like Instagram comes with some side effects.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
and but I believe, how do we empower individuals knowing we have porn? You know, how do we normalize? How do we counter that? How do we allow men? Now, I work a lot with men who have erectile dysfunction, and I believe when the most common cause is performance anxiety, and therefore they have a hard time either maintaining an erection or climax too quickly. And one of the biggest things is like not being able to relax into your body, not being able to like touch someone the way you want, because you want to be confident, you want to be this, and then you don't have the tools to be confident. How do we teach men to be confident? How do we teach men to follow their impulses while also being able to read consent, while also
Mm.
being able to read their partners? How do we teach men to breathe into their bodies, to relax? Because for me, this is more important. Okay, porn is an issue, but how do we solve this issue? Because people are going to keep watching us.
Yeah. A lot of it comes down to, and if you say the word education, people immediately think of schools, but I think it's a lot more of it about providing knowledge and not just information to people. And I think one of the societal challenges that we have, I think, and you can please correct me, is that a lot of people view sex as penetration. That everything else we do in the form of foreplay, etc., is building up to sex, as opposed to thinking that sex can be kissing, sex can be stroking, sex can be massage, sex can be touching, can be tasting, all those things, and that can be the sex. It doesn't have to be around penetration, and I think that's, well. First of all, do you agree? And I think that, and secondly, I think that's one of the things that we perhaps, yeah, would maybe take away from performance anxiety, because knowing that, gosh, okay, I've got it in a few seconds. I've got it. Yeah, okay. You're not thinking about that. You're just enjoying the moment that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I feel like my definition of sex changes all the time. And I worked in an erotic hypnosis lab. There's sex with only words,
Hmm.
like with only hypnotization, which can be done online without even seeing the person. And so, like, there is a lot of different kinds of ways to have really fulfilling sex. And that's something I absolutely, absolutely agree with. And yes, the like penetration first, or penetration focus of sex is really disserving a lot of people. And I think we think about it usually not serving women or people with vulvas. And I think what dates back to Freud is Freud said, like, the best way to have an orgasm is through penetration. Clitoral stimulation orgasms aren't as valid, aren't as good. And I think there was even further than that, is something's fucked up with women who need them. um, So it's rooted in psychology, it's rooted in the mental health like sector, is this focus on penetration and sex. And I think it's really important to also say this isn't serving men. I think we've also always thought like, oh, this serves men, men like penetration, but this isn't serving anyone, because yes, men are having more performance anxiety. Men think the only way to have good sex, the only way to please my partner is to have a big cock and to fuck hard for a long time. I know I don't like to be fucked hard for a long time. That is terrible sex for me. And so, like, the things they think makes good sex and the things porn shows that makes good sex isn't actually good sex for
Mm.
anyone. And how do you teach people that? It's hard and it takes a lot of time. Like, okay, like when I work with someone, how do we sneakily work it in, like penetration isn't everything. What else can you do? How else can you relax? Yeah.
And there's still a misconception about how many women orgasm from penetration. And it's incredibly, depending who you listen to, it's an incredibly low number. It's certainly the majority don't orgasm from penetration, but the majority of men believe that their partner does. so there's a big disconnect between the women that do and the men that think they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as you said before, it's gosh, when you go back to sort of Freud and think about, well, no, that isn't as valid, or that isn't something women need. It's extraordinary. But again, that's about exploring, really. And I think one of the things we you kind of talk about before we hit record was communication and some of the challenges I have around communication, and not necessarily in a sexual way, but in general in life. And I do think communication is, without over communicating, very important. And I think that when we have been in a relationship for a period of time, and that might be a month, it could be a year, it could be 10 years, it could be 50 years, the things that we like, the things that me might not like, things you might want to try, I'm sure evolve and change over that time. But I also think many people find it very hard to have that discussion and to start that conversation. Because you said before, none of us want to be judged negatively. None of us want our partner to react in a sort of horrified way. And I think sometimes we think about something in our heads. It might be, I don't know, I've always wanted my nipples to be pinched or whatever, I don't know, bitten or something. And we get it in our heads and we've thought about it for a week, a month, 6 months, a year, and we've got it in our heads. And then suddenly when we sort of throw it out to a partner, they haven't been thinking about it at all. And we're suddenly expecting them to have an immediate answer, a positive answer, when we've had it, and they're not catching up with us. So I just wondered, this is probably the biggest question of the whole thing, really. How do we create the safe space, the right space to have a discussion about our likes and dislikes and how they change over time?
Yeah. I first just want to say like how hard this is, right? Like we can be in a relationship for 30, 40 years and maybe have never talked about sex.
Yep.
Maybe have never even had an orgasm that we're supposed to talk to our partner. And sex has become one of the most sensitive subjects because we're supposed to be good at it without ever having education about it. So, without ever having been taught skills, and I think sex is one of the things that, yes, how to put a penis in a vagina might come naturally, or now I'm not including vagina sex or
Mm-hmm.
penis sex, or all the variations between that. But let's say heterosexual sex is what I'm talking about. But like true enjoyment doesn't come naturally. To keep the erotic alive, to have mind blowing sex, I don't think that comes naturally for most people. Maybe if our very select few don't need to talk about it and can have mind blowing sex, I don't know those few. And how to create a safe environment is so hard because every partner is different. And I guess to some degree, I think there exists sex and relationship coaches and sexologists and therapists for a reason, to provide a safe environment to provide this, that can
Hmm.
hold the space in a way that feels good. And there's been like, how do you introduce things? Now I'm gonna go to 30 years, like, and not make it about your partner. I think like not blaming, like taking accountability, like, hey, like I know I've never talked about this. I've had too much shame. And maybe saying, I just stumbled across this podcast talking about this, or I was around my friends talking about this and I realized it's a conversation we need to have. Or like, I don't know if you need to blame it, but I'm guessing if it's 30 years, maybe it's easier
Yeah.
to say what sparked the thing that you haven't got around. Like, and also like there is a sensitivity that can be had. Like, we're accountable for our own pleasure. If our partners haven't been pleasing us for 30 years, it's not usually their fault, except if they're refusing to do whatever. Or actually, if you're staying with them, it's usually your choice to not be pleased, right? You could always get a divorce, except okay, maybe not always. There's also financial things and kids, but if we're choosing to stay with someone for 30 years and we're not getting like taking accountability of that pleasure, like I haven't advocated for myself to get pleasure, I haven't done the things, how do I know what gives me pleasure? Maybe it's just saying to your partner, like, I realized I haven't explored my body,
Mm.
could you help me explore my body? Or I realized I have this interest and the sex we have is amazing, I love you, would you be willing to explore this with me? And it's also possible that the person we have might have a negative reaction. Can we sit with that? Can we de-shamify these sexual acts as much as possible so we can handle more of a negative reaction without shame spiraling ourselves? And I realize these are not like concrete advice tips. But yeah.
And they are. I think it's very good advice to sort of say. We do increasingly say, "Oh gosh, somebody gave me this book to read," I heard something on a podcast, or I saw something on Netflix, or yeah, I think it is good to have that sort of spark and not just say, right, let's sit at the table. I want to talk about sex and our relationship. It's not going to come across as well. But I think I talked to a really lovely dominatrix in Romania a few months ago. She was saying a lot of the nearly all the men that come to her, it's not about sex or about being dominated as such. It's just that they want to be in a more submissive environment for a period of time, and they feel that society, their careers, their lives, whatever, have been very much led to them having, being dominant, being a sort of alpha male, etc., and that they feel that they're very, very challenged if they have that discussion with their partner, saying, "I want to be submissive to you." So they go off and have that discussion with somebody else. So they're far more comfortable talking about it to a complete stranger than they are talking about it to their partner. So, yeah, I do think having that discussion about, yeah, I've heard this on a podcast, or yeah, I heard sort of Anya talking about this, or I saw this great website, or I think that's a really great way of just introducing it. And I think even though you might have been thinking about it yourself for 2 years, 5 years, whatever, not just not just to dive in and throw everything onto the table, because you may well sort of scare somebody off. I think by having that gentle discussion and giving them space to say what they think as well.
And there are also things maybe you choose not to talk to a partner about. Like,
Yeah,
I think something like sub- being a submissive man is submissive heterosexual man, especially, is such a stigmatized
mm,
sexuality. And a lot of partners don't have amazing responses to it. And it would be wonderful if people, but if someone wants to go outside of their relationship to go get a dominatrix, fantastic. Like they have a place to turn, because it is, even if you're single, it's really fucking hard finding dominant women today. It's
yeah,
like, it's, and I have a lot of submissive male clients. And for me, it's heartbreaking and how hard it is. And beautiful. I have one, like, I have a client who just wants to serve someone, just wants to do chores for someone, doesn't even care about the sexual aspect. And I was like, this would be someone's dream, right? And he can't find a partner or is struggling. And I just, yeah, and I guess I want to say, like, it's okay to keep fantasies to yourself. Your partner doesn't need to know everything about you. But if you want to be having amazing sex with your partner, and that is a choice that you're making, then you need to communicate it because it's not going to happen naturally.
Mm. And I increasingly think that there's a difference between some fantasies and what we actually want to try. Some things you might watch some porn or read a book or listen to somebody talking and think, oh my God, I used to have this incredibly vivid imagination about something, this incredible fantasy. But you know that you'd be incredibly uncomfortable. It's not something you want to do at all. It's just, like I say, it can remain a fantasy. It can absolutely remain a fantasy. In different ways of life as well. I sometimes fantasize about driving down the freeway at 400 kilometers an hour. I know I never ever want to do it really, but the fantasy of doing it is something that I think you can, like you say, you can hold on to a fantasy, and it can just be that. It can just be a fantasy. But if there are things that you actually want to try, or there are less, almost less vivid versions of the fantasy. So you might fantasize about being with a different person outside of your relationship. But what you might want to do in reality is to meet your partner in a hotel bar and not know each other and go to a hotel room and leave and not talk about it again. I mean, it's a similar thing, but you're converting the fantasy into something that you're comfortable with in reality.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, my senior bachelor's thesis was on fantasies. So for me, I
Okay.
think it's one of the most, I think erotic fantasies are some of the most fascinating things ever because they're so shamed. And yes, there's absolutely fantasies that we don't want to have. And I think one such type fantasy, rape fantasies, are really freaking common. I think it's like 2/3 of women and
Yeah.
1/3 of men have had rape fantasies. And but I do think, although most of us don't want to have forced sex because that's a horrible experience, there are aspects to the fantasy that we might like the feeling of being taken, the feeling of being wanted so bad that someone goes over a boundary, the
Mhm.
feeling of yeah, being so desired. I don't know what that fantasy is, but there, or the feeling of not needing to have control. Like there is, going back to core desires, those erotic themes that I'm guessing many actually want to experience. But the whole fantasy, absolutely not. I think most of my fantasies I might not want to experience from beginning to end, right? But there are like very important aspects of them I absolutely do want to.
Yeah, you said earlier, I think one of your core desires was not being in control. I think that's what you said. So I think that's a similar thing, isn't it? But it's very,
Yeah.
very different from somebody grabbing you off the street and attacking you than there is in thinking your partner's out and hearing a noise, and then somebody suddenly grabs you in the house. You know full well it's your partner, but you're still being taken as such with consent, but you've agreed a lot beforehand. So I think there's a big difference between the two. Yeah, no, I totally agree. What a great topic for a dissertation.
Yeah.
I love that. Your thesis talking about fantasies. Interesting.
I
Um, how different do you find it working with individuals compared to couples? And when a couple comes to you, does it tend to be one person that's the driving force between reaching out to you?
so I mainly work with individuals. I don't work as much with couples, and so I can't really, I don't know if I'll answer that question because I just don't think I've worked with a handful of couples, but I've worked with many, many individuals. So I don't think I have as much data to
Hmm.
answer that question.
And do you find that do you find there's generally a common theme to what individuals are looking for when they come and talk to you?
This changes so much.
Really? Okay.
I've been working with this for about 2 years.
Mhm.
Women often have troubles. I've had a lot of people around like anxious attachments, trouble finding a partner, low desire a lot of the time. not feeling sexually fulfilled. Men, okay, the number one problem men come to me for is erectile dysfunction or unreliable erections. And then number two is probably having trouble finding a partner. And especially like a lot of submissive men come who have
Yeah.
trouble and who
Mhm.
feel shame, and also men who don't feel confident in bed, which often goes in hand with erectile dysfunction.
And how do you approach the topic of feeling more confident? So I guess that's either come about because of something that has happened or not happened in a previous relationship, or in general that the person might just be a confident individual. So how do you help somebody feel more confident in themselves?
This makes me so happy, this question, and there's so many different aspects, and I think most of us aren't completely confident in bed. Um, I know, like, I would say I'm quite confident, like, I work with this. There's sometimes I'm like, oh, what's happening? And like, you can get thrown off. And so I just want to normalize that aspect. And I think for me, everything starts from an aspect of like normalizing people's experiences, taking away the shame, taking away like, that's for me number one, like celebrating what people already can do, celebrating how they look, how they interact, how I feel in their presence,
Mhm.
and then normalizing their experience, taking away the shame as much as possible. And I think that's like the grounding principle. And then like confidence, I think, comes from a way of not being as scared to act on our impulses, like maybe it is like daring to touch someone in a certain way and then practicing touch in session, like how do I touch for my own pleasure? Or how do I maintain intimacy? Like maybe looking into each other's eyes and like feeling it when it comes up. Or how do I think confidence also comes from a presence, like being able to stay present in the moment, and that might come from breath work, or might just come from like practicing staying present together, practicing feeling in together. I also think confidence can come from a trust of being able to read your partner, being able to attune to your partner, being able to know how to please your partner. And so confidence that can come from communication. It can also come from practice of attuning to each other, practice that my clients attuning to me, being able to read me and understanding what I like and seeing where my no's are, being able to navigate consent. Consent is I don't care what other people say, I think it's a really fucking complicated topic. And it's not easy to navigate. And so, how do we navigate consent confidently, sexily? So there is so many different things that build into sexual confidence, right? But I think it starts with normalization, celebration, and then adding all the tools, adding all the experimental practices into that builds someone's sexual confidence.
Do you love what you're doing?
Yes. I have my dream job. Um, and so I mean, what I really love, I love working with individuals. I think, like, as I said before we started, like, for me, being able to connect with people, being able to listen to what you're going through, I would do it for free. I do it for free. I talk to my friends, I talk to people on the street, like, it is my favorite thing in the world. And what I'm trying to transition more and more to is holding groups. I
Yeah.
love holding groups. I love teaching. I love creating community. And I think this is my next step. So I love what I'm doing, but I want to do more.
Hmm. That's what I was going to ask next. Actually, what do you see as the future? What do you see yourself doing as you move forward?
I made the joke. I set my goal very high. I was like, I want to substantially change Swedish culture around their relationship to sex and relationships, and especially take away like the stigma and the shame in it. But that's a big thing. But I want to hold my biggest thing is like creating sexually empowered communities, creating spaces for people to explore. And right now it's women
Mhm.
and non-binary people that I'm focused on, but I also think men like is a very needed. Like, how do we create a space for men to explore what they like, to learn how to navigate consent? And I want it to be a part of the culture that is a normalized part. Like, oh, this is something we do, like we take classes or we take workshops to learn how to navigate sex because it's not something that comes naturally. And I mean, ideally, long. And so I guess I want to be part of a movement. I don't want it just to be me. Like, I think I have high aspirations, but I think like I'm trying to build something that helps people long term in a whole society. I don't like maybe that is weird to say.
No, it's inspiring actually to have somebody that knows what they want and to, I think, have the confidence and ability to do it. So yeah, you should be hugely applauded and congratulated and thanked, I think. And then the last thing I want to ask you, because you've been super generous with your time, is you obviously talk to a lot of people. Some of the people that you talk to, I'm sure, have had particular challenges. Some people have been through some different traumas. Some people have, yeah, not had a good sort of start to life. And I wondered, how do you protect and nourish your own mental and physical well-being? How do you make sure you can show up as the best version of yourself without carrying everybody else's trauma with you?
Yeah. Hmm. Oh, there's so many ways, and I think it can go up and down. Like sometimes we are affected
Yeah, of
by
course.
the things we carry, or sometimes I'm not as good, and I want to just normalize. Like I'm not perfect at taking care of myself all the time, and not because it's my client's trauma, but sometimes I'm overbooked or I do too many things. Like I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, so I think it's a natural side effect of that part. Probably explains some of this conversation of how I talk to, but like, and there's a lot of things I do. The biggest thing I have is I have amazing friends and family.
Mm.
I talk to people when I need support. I call people when like yesterday, I just got my period after 5 years of having an IUD. I'm
Right.
having intense period cramps, and my friend came over and cuddled with me for like an hour. And so, for me, co regulation is the number one way for me to get centered, for me to feel peaceful within my body. I want to normalize that for people who have trouble regulating on their own. Um, I also like I have so many hobbies. I bike, I ski, I run, I ice skate, I do yoga, I teach yoga. And like that is another way. And I think we're so scared of trauma and we're so scared of taking on other people's things. And for me, I know I can carry other people's things. Like, I don't know. Like, when we talked and you shared something hard, started tearing up. For me, that's normal, but I'm also very used to it being able to regulate very fast back. So, someone can, and I don't, and I think people's ability and long that fluctuate, but like, I know myself and that I can hold other people's things. And then I have the ability to regulate back. And I think also just, I'm not going to have a ton of clients in a day. I have no interest in working like a therapist who have seven
Yeah,
clients back to back. I can never do that. That will be far beyond my capacity and I won't be a good coach.
that's a great answer. And are you a meditation, breathwork kind of person?
Yes, I'm not perfect at doing meditation and breath work either. I do it here and there. Um, always, I think, like most people, it's something I wish I did more, but
Mhm.
I think I've decided it's fully okay to do it as much as
Hmm.
I do.
It's funny the word you used then was burden, and I think that's again often a thing we say in the UK, and I'm sure probably in Western society generally. Oh, I don't want to burden you with my problems. I don't want to burden you with my guilt, my shame, my anxiety, whatever. But I think it is very comforting to know that some people, you, are comfortable holding somebody's burden for a while, that it's not going to crush you or affect you or hurt you. And I think that's an incredibly powerful trait that you have. So thank you for that.
I really actually want to respond to this. Can I?
Okay.
Because I had a friend come over, the friend who came over and cuddled with me yesterday. She started crying, and I think she's never really cried with a friend. And she was like, "Oh, I don't want to burden you," right?
Mhm.
Like for me, you crying isn't a burden at all. And I think, like for many, it might be. But our societal notion that crying is a burden, for me, what's a burden is someone showing up inauthentically when I can tell that someone's sad and they're hiding it. Or when I can tell someone is grumpy and they don't want to show it. Like, I'd much rather someone be bitchy to me or be burdened or be mad at me than hide it. And so for me, it's not a burden. I can handle emotion. What I have trouble handling is people not showing emotion, not being their full range of themselves. Like, I would much rather you yell at me than go around and just kind of be frustrated with me for months. And so I'm tired of the word burden when we talk about heavy emotion. It's beautiful. For me, that's not a burden. It's wonderful to sit with you when you're crying. That's an honor. That's not a burden.
It's very funny because I'm very comfortable with people crying on me as well. And I'd much rather, feel their tears and let my own flow. I think that's something I said at the beginning, is that it's been I find it much easier to be there for somebody else and not, not sort of release what I'm feeling, but take on board other people's feelings. Do you think you're actually doing something? Um, and sometimes when you're the person giving the burden, wrong word, but you don't feel as good really. So that isn't part of this sexuality discussion, but just as a general thing, I do think that actually it's lovely if you can sort of hold somebody and they're very sad and they let the sadness out and they might feel a little bit better. And I can't remember when I last cried.
I
I don't
think it's
know.
definitely a part of the sexuality discussion because able to show up as our full authentic self is part of sexuality. That means showing up with our feelings. That means showing up with the hard parts of ourselves. Otherwise, we're not going to be showing up as our full authentic self in sexuality or in relationship. And I absolutely think it's a gift being able to cry to someone. Like, not to say that I'm perfect, but I think like I come to my friends when I feel shame. I tell them, "Oh, I fucked up in this and this way." What do my friends do now? They come to me when they feel shame because they know I'm fucked up, right? They know I'm not going to have any judgment because I'm fucked up already.
Mm.
And I think, or I start crying to someone and that gives them permission the next time to cry to me. And so I do think it's a huge gift and a huge like safety creation, being open about these things and showing the more hard parts.
I this sounds really, it's going to sound really stupid now, but I don't know how to cry, so I can't. Yeah, I certainly can't remember crying in the last 10 years or so. So I don't know how to how to start. Some of me feels that it's I have a fear of, if I go into a grieving mode or a crying mode, that I won't be able to get out of it. The grief will just consume me. So maybe I'll book some time with you and talk about how can I actually cry. I'd love to be able to cry. I think, but yeah. Just don't.
Just want to normalize how many people haven't cried for 10 years, and especially men. Like, most men have been socialized their whole lives to be taught not to cry, and then to like do the crying. It's hard. It's really hard, and it is scary. Like, how can we trust ourselves not to be fully consumed by it when it happens? Or, yeah, I don't know. There is, like, it's a beautiful thing to cry and to feel sad, and also so scary.
I just want to thank you so much for your time. We've talked about far more things than I've talked about with anything. You are very. I don't offer platitudes. I just want to say that you're very comforting, and I don't know if that sounds like a good thing or not really, but you are very. I can completely understand why your friends come to you, and why your clients come to you, and why people reach out to you. I think it's just a presence that you have, really. So I think you're definitely in the right space with what you're doing and what you're going to do. So I know you're going to do even more great things, and I'm really interested in following your trajectory. So yeah, thank you so much for before recording, during recording, and hopefully after recording. So I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and you're such a good podcaster. I'm always amazed. I'm like, I should take lessons. So I'm learning from you, and I really appreciate your questions and conversation.
Thank you.